7, 8, 9, 10. This is Chad Bear, and you're listening to My Alien Life.
And that kind of speaks to what we're talking about. The difference between science and public perception can mean the difference between life and death. It really can. We look back and we have like our Downtown Abbey and our Doctor Who, so we look back and think, oh, well, these men were clean and learned and disciplined. Not so at all. It turns out when you give someone the idea that they're just going to be okay, they tend to do a bunch of things that make them not okay. If we can look back and see that a commonplace practice that nobody even thought about twice back then, if we can see how big a difference that obvious a change can make, what can we do? What do you think we'll know tomorrow?
Tonight, the coronavirus pandemic, and I am joined by Cassidea Lightwing as we explore some of the human history of viruses and pandemics that shaped our world. That and more is coming right up on My Alien Life. My Alien Life is recorded live from atop the Northern Rocky Mountains and is available on Spotify, Stitcher, iTunes, and everywhere fine podcasts are found. My website is at www.myalienlifepodcast.com. There you will find my email address, all previously recorded shows, and more. I am Cameron Brower. This is My Alien Life, and the podcast starts right now.
My Alien Life Podcast.
Three, two, 1, 0, 0, and liftoff.
Something a little different tonight. It's Friday, March 13th, 2020. And today, if you listen to the radio or watched it on TV, the President of the United States just declared a national emergency due to the coronavirus pandemic. And, so many lives change so fast, and rightfully so. And this is something we all need to get behind together. So if you can't fight this for yourself, let's do it for somebody else, because this probably will be the only way if we do it together. And I truly believe that as Americans, we won't let anyone get away with not participating in the success of us as humans and us as a global community. And tonight, I'm going to offer you a guarantee that afterwards, sometime along the way, we'll be stronger and better. And often we think in numbers and become concerned when we see the death tolls that are totally relative to the comfort zone in each of us. But when we have no connection to those numbers, we might find it easy to ignore the plight of others, because we might feel that suffering we see on TV or the internet doesn't affect us, or we don't know anyone suffering at the moment. So now I'd like you to introduce you to my family. My older brother Tracy died at the age of 40, leaving a wife and a 1-year-old daughter. On Friday night, he came home and he was ready for the weekend, just like everyone in America, not a care in the world. He was incredibly fit, great shape, and could bench press like 400 pounds, and successful businessman. And Saturday morning, he woke up with a slight sore throat, became a little bit sicker through the weekend, not bad. Went to work on Monday. Monday night after work, he went to the doctor because he felt really bad, I guess. Didn't talk to him, but according to my parents, he felt very, very bad. So the hospital admitted him. And my dad called me and told me that my brother had a respiratory problem. And keep in mind, my dad, I went to 4 years of college. I think my dad called me one time. It was not that he didn't care. It was just not that kind of guy. So when my dad called me, I knew there was an issue, and he called me at work. And he said, again, my brother had a respiratory problem, and it was life-threatening. And that was on a Tuesday. And on Wednesday, I flew to San Jose with my younger brother. And I was able to talk to my older brother. And when I talked to him, it was on Thursday night, and he was in his ICU unit room and was struggling to breathe. He was on oxygen, and every antibiotic and antiviral that his body could take. And on Saturday morning, they put him on a ventilator, and he remained on a ventilator until his organs began to fail 20 days later because of carbon dioxide in his blood. His lungs weren't making the correct exchange of oxygen and CO2, which ultimately caused his death. And in 25 days, they tested him for every virus, including AIDS and hantavirus and everything they could think of. And the cause of his death on his death certificate was acute respiratory distress and due to an unspecified virus. And that was in 1997. He was the only victim of an unknown virus that the doctors had ever heard of in California. So, yeah, viruses happen. They pop up in unlikely places. They're a part of nature. They shaped who we are quite a bit over the millions of years and that we've evolved on this earth. And there's little doubt that you'll know someone who will get the novel coronavirus in the next year. So we want to do everything we can to make sure that isn't you. So one of the things I want everybody to remember is you don't have to get this. And you don't have to, because you can wash your hands. That's such an easy thing. Basic hygiene, don't cough on people, and social distancing is a must. So unfortunately, if somebody in your house gets it, you're going to have to take care of them, and you're going to have to experience the ultimate hygiene. And you might have to do a little research on that, but we can do this, and we will do this, and we'll be just fine. And I have back tonight a special guest that you've heard before. His name is Cassidea Lightwing. Are you there? Did I lose you?
I'm here. I'm here.
All right.
So, I wanted to listen to your story.
Yeah. So that's quite a remarkable thing that happened to me in 1997. And, right now I'm just like, wow, what the fuck?
Yeah, well, I would be too, especially if I had a brother that died in 97.
Well, and back
97 was a big year.
And back then it was so unusual because, we never expected that. I expected to go there. And, I thought, I'm going to be there for maybe a week. And at the end of that week, we're all going to laugh about that. And he's going to be home.
Yeah.
And it was just, it kept going on and on and on. And it was like the nightmare that didn't end. And then, I had to go home. I couldn't stay there. My mom stayed with him and my dad stayed with him.
Yeah.
And, until the end. And every day I was expecting, he's going to go home tomorrow. And, it just got so unusual. And, what is this? Why can't they fix it? Why can't they treat it? And every day they were testing for something different. And, it just negative test, nothing. I mean, they learned nothing. I mean, even weeks later, they learned nothing. There was an autopsy. There was everything. They learned nothing. And, it was something that it was unspecific, and it was one person. So it's not like a team of researchers popped in and started, looking at blood samples and things like that. And, it just the most unusual way to go for such a, young, vibrant dude.
Yeah. Well, especially given the few symptoms that we do know that you've shared with us already, give us a lot of insight, believe it or not, into possibly what happened there. that they wouldn't have even been able to think of in 1997.
Right.
You know?
Right. And back then, and to me it looked, the treatment looked so cutting edge. I mean, every tube and every monitor and everything was hooked up, and that's a lot of time to spend in intensive care. And
right.
And
well,
go ahead.
But there's not a whole lot to do when something's basically blocking respiration at the molecular level.
Right. And that's ultimately that's what it is too. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not like you can crawl in there and fix it, because it's just such at a minute level. I mean, that oxygen goes easily into the blood. You can force it into the blood, but it's not coming out if CO2 is not coming out. If there's some pretty sophisticated molecular, there's some science going on there in the bloodstream, and the body's an amazing thing. And if it's not working, it's not working, and there's nothing you can do to push it to make it work.
Well, not without the right technology, anyway.
And that was, one of the, I didn't know a lot about AIDS back in 1997. I knew enough, and and then you heard AIDS, and then you heard hantavirus. None of those are good. and then there was this virus and that virus and other things. And it was really a strange thing. And they were just, so many tests, and it was just happening, on a daily basis, and just waiting for that news, So, I can be very sympathetic for people who are really going through that right now. And there's thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people right now who are waiting for news and trying to figure this out. And, go ahead, Cass.
Well, if somebody's never gone through like an unknown, like what the heck is happening to my loved one, there's really no way you can empathize with it. You can try to sympathize, but until you've gone through it, that kind of horror just isn't part of your life.
Well, and it's not part of our life, not daily life, but there are countries, there's African countries who live with that on a regular basis, and and it's something that's never gone away, and we can look back in time for 200,000 years and see that people had suffered from plagues and viruses and and bacteria and everything else for a very, very long time. But, once we became so modern and we survived through all these diseases of our industrial revolution, it became a point where all these tiny natural organisms that we can't see, not organisms, but viruses and bacteria, seem so unusual when it's actually, part of who we are and made us who we are.
Yeah.
It's amazing, but it's part of us.
Well, yeah. The body is a microcosm. It's an environment. Each person's body is an environment unto itself. And sadly, as scary as it may be, viruses and bacteria and symbiotic organisms are part of that.
Absolutely. So there was an article I read today, and it was about what would happen to us if we had no viruses or bacteria in our body. Super, super interesting. And
wow,
we wouldn't be here. But there's some we live with. And there's some we live with seasonally. There's some we live with later in life. There's some that we work out real well with, and it provides a real symbiotic relationship early in our life, in our womb, and it just changes and constantly changes, and it's just really amazing. So, but it's right now it's one of those things that we haven't had to do this in a while, and that's kind of what we're going to talk about tonight. And we haven't had to do this. It's part of our world. And unfortunately, we don't have to do this that often. And that's what being American is about. Again, other countries have to deal with this a lot more than we do. But I think one of the questions that I had and I've had before, and this isn't the first time. It's why China? And
that's actually pretty easy.
Yeah,
that's actually really easy.
Yeah, go ahead.
You see, Well, a lot of people get frustrated, especially, and I can speak to this one personally, people who are waiting for life-altering medicines and things like that. They get frustrated with America's FDA processes and the safety evaluations, things like that, long-term safety. People get frustrated, right? Well, in China, there's no FDA. There's no regulations. Because in China, the thought is, well, if you've got money, you can just do it. Oh, we don't need these petty. Oh, those Americans, they're so uptight. Well, unfortunately, China is also, this is kind of dovetailing with a different problem. When China became a global market, they started exposing themselves to essentially all of the world's everything, all of the world's bacteria, viruses, et cetera, et cetera. And with no regulations for quarantines and things like that, of course, all of these microorganisms would propagate together. Okay. Now, on top of that, you have the cleanliness situation, the way people don't wash their hands as much as we do here. They don't wash their food. They don't cook their food in these, provincial districts, not China. And I'm not making a commentary on China itself or, Chinese people, but we all know there's slums in every country. Okay. There's bad parts of every country. And when life gets so hard, sometimes it's just not worth it to cook the food all the way. We've all pulled a raw hot dog out of the refrigerator, I'm sure.
Not me, man.
But the thing is, oh, really?
Not anymore. One time.
Oh, yeah, after this, probably not. After this, I think we're all going to change.
Yeah.
But, the eating of essentially raw or undercooked food that's been mingling with all of the world's, bacteria and whatnot, something like this is bound to happen. And it happens every couple of years, coming out of one of these bad districts in China. And it's not just China, it's other districts. Hell, this happens in America too. Whenever there's an unregulated medicine, facility. For example, everyone knows someone who was just fine until they got the flu shot, and then they got the flu. Right. Same thing. That's an undervaluing of production methods and cleanliness and quality work.
So I've been sick for like a month, and every time I do a podcast, I kind of mention it. Excuse me, but my voice is this. But it started on the onset of 1 month ago. I got a shingles shot. And the reason why is because I went to my wife was going to get a flu shot, and we were at the pharmacy. And I just, as a joke, said, "So what other shots can you get for free?" And he goes, "Well, we got shingle shots." And I go, and he said, the pharmacist said, "But there's a waiting list for those." And I said, "Really?" I said, "Why is there a waiting list?" "Well, we can't get very many doses, so we get a few at a time." And he goes, like 10 minutes later, while she was waiting to get her flu shot, he literally says, "I got like 4 extra. I'd give you one." And I just said, okay, it was free. And, so yeah,
wow. Have you ever had chicken pox?
Yes, I have. So,
okay.
And, so yeah, I had, the shingle shot, and, I don't want to throw out all my issues out there, but I had some sort of weird cold that is like lingered on. I went into the doctor because I was in massive pain, my head, the roof of my mouth. He said, "You have thrush." And I said,
"Thrush?
How the hell? I got a yeast infection in my mouth. So I have this cold, I have this sinus infection, and I have thrush."
Wow.
And so I don't know, I mean, I'm sure that that shingles inoculation or injection rather could have messed with my immunity slightly and caused all this.
Oh yeah,
but
especially if you research the shingles, what goes into the shingles, vaccine.
No, I don't even want to know that, because I mean, it just seems every shot I've ever had as an adult just seems so odd to me that, they're injecting some sort of fluid in there and nobody, I mean, there's probably a small group of people in the U.S. that could probably describe what's actually in there, but for the most part, not many people could. And,
yeah.
And So then,
honestly, I can't eat.
We're back to that primordial ooze, which is in the jungles of Asia that people encounter from time to time.
Exactly. And, when viruses and microorganisms interact with each other, they mutate, which is why the coronavirus is, kind of where it's at. Coronavirus is everywhere. There's chances are you've had a coronavirus in your life.
Absolutely.
That's just a fact. The thing is, what makes this little booger so different is that it mutated to be a lot more sturdy and a lot more viral.
Right. And one of the things too that it seems to be there was a lack of information being shared between China and like everywhere. And
well, yeah,
we were starting to pick that up in little bits and information, little bits of pieces, and of course, we could have reacted a little quicker. However, I'll get into that later. But we're talking about China and why China, and one of the things that can't be helped there really is they have this concentration of a population, and they have a lot of intimate contact with lots of species of animals, and there's not the best hygiene there required, and it's just this recipe for all these viruses. But I do have to say, I mean, here's, it doesn't matter where you are in Asia and Eastern Europe and Russia. I mean, you have different communities and different populations that eat different types of fermented food that are just laced with what we would consider the nastiest bacteria. But there's a reason moonshine's illegal. These folks are champions of eating anything, and they're eating things on a daily basis and drinking water that we could never do in our lifetime, as adults. So being brought up in that sort of climate, I mean, it's extremely helpful, and it also helps them be successful in battling off some of these wicked bacteria and viruses that they don't see very often.
Right. Well, but begging your pardon, I think that's part of the problem. You see, the thing is that, the Asian, that area, especially with the areas that are prone to monsoons and things like that, without proper inoculations, just that environment can kill an American in a week.
Exactly.
Anybody who had relative in Vietnam War,
Right.
So I think with the Chinese, that kind of bred a bit of an arrogance, not with their scientists, obviously. They're not stupid. Chinese people aren't stupid, obviously. But with the older ones that have been, seen around the world, and they kind of notice, they have very strong immune systems, the people that live in those regions, So I think that what happened is they figured, we can take stuff that the rest of the world can't even take. So they figured they could deal with it. But I think that the policymakers and the money changers didn't understand that that's not how virology works. You could be like the best, H1N1 dude in history. Like you could eat H1N1 forever. Giant pills of H1N1, stick it in your eyes, all that stuff. But then one little H1N2 will drop you like third period French.
Yeah, and I think
so. It just
culturally speaking, I mean, they have they do things so different, and things that we would normally worry about, especially if we're talking about livestock and poultry and pigs, and they have a definite limited sanitation, maybe some lax oversight in that type of farming. However, that's something that they're used to dealing with on an individual level because they're exposed to that. But then farmers bring their livestock to wet markets. They've come in contact, farmers and the livestock come in contact with all sorts of exotic animals, birds, mammals, reptiles, which are host viruses. Yeah, and they can jump species. They rapidly mutate, like you said, and so thus, potentially infecting humans in cities that, Yes, they're eating chickens, they're eating pork, but that chicken and pork could have come in contact with a primate or a bat or whatever. I mean, it's
and
amazing.
Especially with the pork. Pork is so similar to humans that a lot of things that live in pork that pigs can survive can also live in humans, and humans can't survive it.
Pigs are amazing. I mean, they're in the mud.
Really
it doesn't matter what country a pig is in. I mean, they're exposing themselves to some of the worst stuff that the earth offers, and they come through just fine, but we eat them anyway,
Yeah. There's some old shamanistic legends about pigs you might be interested in sometime.
Well, there's a huge, culturally speaking, and different people around the world who don't eat pork. I mean, they don't eat it for a reason. I mean, there's a lot of lore, and there's a lot of a lot of stories about pigs and how dirty they are, and it's true. Yeah. But we're eating them as fast as we can. I had bacon and Diet Coke for lunch today. That was my treat.
Bacon. Yeah, bacon. It's one of the 4 food groups. Bacon, chocolate, coffee, and I don't know. You there?
Yeah, I'm here, man.
Okay, I thought I lost you for a second.
But a lot of cultural reasons, why China plays host to large outbreaks. Many Chinese are city dwellers, and they love the fact that freshly slaughtered poultry is tastier and more healthful than refrigerated or frozen meat. And again, they are able to tolerate that better than we are. But then again, there's the commingling of viruses and the jumping of species that can be detrimental and ultimately fatal to people in the form of a virus.
Yeah, that's true. But it can I bring up a kind of slightly side point on that?
Please do.
I would like to stray away from saying that I think it's less cultural and more bureaucratic in China right now. For those of us who are old enough to remember, there was a while where everyone thought the next superbug was going to come out of Seattle, for a lot of the same reasons. It's wet environment, very, very multicultural, and at the time, not a whole lot of regulation. I think that once China sort of, the Chinese government, not the Chinese people, they've got the point. I think once the government sort of figures out that, oh wait, there's a reason why we do things this way, the problem will clear up. I think this is really just a consequence of becoming a cosmopolitan country. If you check the trends, something like this pops up pretty much whenever a country opens its borders to the world in trade.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I think, too, that, the Chinese have come up with a lot of traditional medicines that absolutely work, and they're miracle drugs. However, there are some that, they may have COVID-19. They're suffering, and they may go to an herbalist and have some herbal or animal-based remedy, and obviously that's not going to work with the virus. And I know in China that they have already were promoting an unproven composition of honeysuckle and I guess it was Chinese skullcap, which I don't know, and weeping forsythia as a treatment for COVID-19. So that was, they were unsuccessfully treating it, but they gave it a shot, and that's on a limited basis. I mean, their medicine there too. They have some amazing universities and hospitals and research facilities there, but there was a few people that waited too long.
Well, yeah. There's another factor is that COVID-19 has genetic influence from other organisms that are far outside of the Chinese medicinal range. without straying too far into, hyperspace or woo-woo or anything like that. Their plant science and plant magic and plant shamanism, whatever you want to call it, just isn't going to cover this because it's not from their world. It's from another world.
Right.
Not like space or anything like that, but it would be the same thing if they tried to use, ginseng on, say, for example, French dancing fever. Wouldn't work.
Right.
I'm not. I have zero doubt that their scientists in their I think it's qigong. I think is how they're pronounced. I've only ever seen it read. I've only ever read it. But anyway, I have zero doubt that between their shamans and their scientists, et cetera, they could find an herbal, Chinese style recipe, as it were, but nothing they have would work.
Right. Well, ultimately, one of the good things that happened was they had to speak up, and I know in some parts of China, and they're known for their secrecy and for the global response that kind of hampered them at first because the government is secret. They control a little bit of the internet or a lot of bit of the internet, depending on your opinion. And some of this information wasn't getting out, but then it seemed they began sharing a lot more data than in the past on these outbreaks. So people in the United States and people who should know about it, like the CDC, started to take notice and started connecting some of these odd little populations of viruses that popped up in the United States. They also, China had, in some places, were permanently banning the sale of live animals at public markets and instituting and enforcing some more food safety regulations and discouraging the use of traditional medicines, and which is interesting to me because China, the herbal medicine is back in China during, they had several onsets of smallpox, and they actually had a treatment for smallpox, which basically was these herbalists would take and mortar and pestle grind smallpox scabs, and they would snort smallpox basically, and sometimes it worked.
And thus the beginning of vaccinations occurred. And yes, folks, it was as gross as advertised.
So,
man, we got stories, man.
Yeah. So
you do not want to look up the science of virology and vaccination with a full stomach. Trust me.
Right. So yeah, that's interesting that vaccinations and started out that way. Of course, Edward Jenner successfully came up with one in the late 1700s, and which is hugely interesting. But we'll talk about that hopefully as well. But anyway, don't be afraid of the Chinese. This is a global pandemic, and it's not going to be our last. And
no, definitely not. That's kind of why I was saying that this is kind of a consequence of globalization, and we, as a people, we should be ready for it, not afraid of it.
Absolutely,
it's not the Chinese fault this happened.
Right.
And if you look up the history of virology, it's happened many times.
Right.
And it's going to happen again.
And you mentioned Seattle, but in the Northwest, where obviously there's no doubt that people have, especially when people first settled in that part of the Northwest, I mean, they were coming up with different things that we've never had before. And historically speaking, it wasn't uncommon. We're just almost as likely to start a pandemic here in the U.S. from some sort of virus, but it probably won't happen for a while until we get, we're going to, in the future, we're going to have these huge population bases that are prone to that kind of disease. And hopefully by then we'll learn how to deal with it.
Well, hopefully by then we'll learn to control our fear response.
Yeah,
let's be honest. The coronavirus is not nearly as dangerous as the fearful people.
That's so true.
You know?
Yeah. And I think that's one of the worst parts of this is that, unfortunately, you have to talk about the stock market and how horrid and scary that looks right now. And the fact that that people feel that they're going to be trapped inside their homes and unable to do the normal things they do in a day. And the best thing that they can come up with is toilet paper.
Yeah. Actually, the funny thing is I was researching that.
Uh-huh.
And we found the origin of why the toilet paper is crashing. What's going on with the toilet paper?
Tell me.
And what it boils down to, and what was that?
Tell me, please, because that wasn't the first thing on my mind when I thought, I better do a little prepping, possibly.
Yeah, well, that's why
Perhaps.
it was so weird, and that's why I looked into it, because it's like coronavirus, toilet paper. Where's the connection?
Right.
What it boils down to is over in California, I think it was in San Francisco, a couple of kids raided the stores for toilet paper and then started a viral, oh my God, the toilet paper. They took pictures of the aisle they raided, right? And then went online and said, oh my God, the toilet paper, and spread it around. Then other people started picking it up and selling it. What's happening now, if you go out there and like investigative journalists are talking about it, the toilet paper is out there. It's being scalped back to the public. You know, that's what's happening. People are selling toilet paper for, between $5 and $10 and $20 a roll.
So
there was never a problem. It's a completely manufactured crisis. I believe they call that profiteering.
I know in one day, Amazon took down 1 million different sales on there because of that.
Yeah.
And,
yeah.
So I actually did go to Walmart and, had to pick up a couple items. So I thought, damn it, I better get into that toilet paper aisle. Excuse me, which I did. And,
yeah.
So I came around and, I was on the end, at the end where all these aisles were and they had the paper towels there and they were gone.
Yeah.
And, I thought, wow, there's no toilet paper left. And, so then I did feel a little bit of twinge of something and I thought I need to get some.
Yeah.
So I turned the corner and there's toilet paper. They'd wiped out all the paper towels and get this is perfect for me because I was a single dad with, 3 kids and, and worked for the government for a long time. So I like the single ply toilet paper with at least 1,000 sheets per roll. It's like sandpaper, man. You could barely tear it off the roll, but one roll of that lasts the kids and I, a month, and we had one bathroom and amazing. And so that's Cass is what was left. And so the people in their panic and in whatever mindset they were in, grabbed all the Charmin, all the fluffy stuff, all the stuff that smells good, and left, the holy grail of toilet paper for me. And anybody else who has worked for the government and doesn't mind that. I like it.
Anybody with a pragmatic mind.
Exactly.
Yeah. When I heard the toilet paper thing, I skipped toilet paper entirely. I went over to, I'm not going to say their name, local fast food restaurant and stocked up on their napkins.
There's that too. And then I heard all over town people would go into restaurants and Walmart and whatever. And in the bathrooms there, people were picking the little locks on the dispensers in the bathroom and taking these big rolls. And
right.
Which
you know what? The last thing in the world I wanted to do is get into a fist fight with somebody over toilet paper. So I just said napkin.
Right. So. There's always a free napkins. And I had a friend.
Exactly.
Yeah. I had a friend who, she had 3 kids and had been divorced. She still does it. And all her kids are grown. She actually still goes into restaurants and wherever and or just pops into a hotel like the Hampton Inn who they have free tea and whatever and just stocks up, plastic silverware and ketchup packets and whatever else. And
Yep, we do that too, and I'm not ashamed to admit it.
no, I think it's, I just kind of wonder how my life would look different if I did that. I haven't done a lot of that, but I've done some. And, I was doing okay as a single dad, but you never know. I mean, you just never know. And like here we are in a situation where things suddenly change and your job possibly isn't as essential. And there's a question mark on when you'll be back there because there's that. And,
insecurity is a hell of a,
and I was talking, and I've said this before, the worst thing for me, and I will admit it, is the fear of the unknown. And I hate it.
Yeah.
Absolutely hate it. I remember when my brother was dying, you didn't know what the next day would bring. I've been in that situation where I feared the unknown, had no idea what it would look like tomorrow. And I understand, we understand, but, we all just need to chill out a little bit because there's always somebody that's going to be there for you. And it may not be tomorrow, may not be the next day, but, and sometimes you have to ask. Sometimes you have to ask.
Nobody's alone, really.
Right.
And another thing, if I may, is that, the coronavirus is it's really not that much scarier than, the common cold. If you look at the numbers and statistics, I mean, it's easy to forget those when you're picturing your loved ones coughing up a lung.
Right.
But again, if you're one of those people that's like, I don't think I need a flu shot, then you probably have nothing to fear from the coronavirus,
Right. And if you ever have any questions, I mean, there are places to go and not to go. I think the CDC is a good website. It's a little bit general. I mean, there's not a lot of specifics, but I think, on one end of the spectrum, there's the CDC. And if you're really, really interested in scaring the hell out of yourself, there's a YouTube channel right now that's live 24/7. And there's a global map on there, and it shows every flag on the planet flash by on the right-hand side vertically in many different columns, and it'll say how many confirmed cases / how many deaths. And then there's also right on the left-hand side, which is most of the screen, will show you different graphs. So maybe it'll show you Africa, or maybe it'll show you Europe, or maybe then it'll break it down. Maybe it'll show you the UK or just the US, and it'll show cases and different things like that. So there's a ton of information on there. But when you look at it, you just can't help but looking at it and seeing the entire planet covered in COVID-19 coronavirus. It's scary to look at. So, it's not something that, I checked out that, and, I'm not going to be back on that for a while. It's just,
I don't blame you. But if we can put this in perspective, I mean, there have been a lot of global pandemics. I mean, there are symbiotic and, absolutely. There are symbiotic organisms that we have in our bodies right now that we only have because of a global pandemic.
Right. Absolutely.
It's just part of evolution, and we have the technology now. If we can control our fear and deal with it as a society, we don't need to go through mass deaths in order to deal with whatever nature's throwing,
And if you live through the discomfort of a cold, and if you're young, you're very likely to have no problem whatsoever. It's you're not going to get it again, and what doesn't literally, when you're talking about how things mutate and how we've survived through natural selection for so long, literally when somebody says, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, it's absolutely true.
Mm-hmm. My man Nietzsche.
So
yes, I know I'm pronouncing it wrong.
And there were so many, even in my lifetime, I mean, we've had, the AIDS, and during 2005 and 2012, I mean, there was a death toll of 36 million, and it was a pandemic. And
oh yeah,
I think.
And for those of us who,
go ahead.
Please continue. I'm sorry, I interrupted.
I think one of the reasons why we didn't see this mass panic is because people took that disease, that virus, and I'm not gay or I'm not this.
Exactly.
And so they automatically excluded themselves from that fear because of ignorance.
Right. And that also stopped, or not stopped, but greatly hindered the effort to stop the spread of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you have carriers going, I can't possibly carry it. Only gay people get that.
Right.
Oh my God, that's not how viruses work.
Right. Right.
So that's another example of the fear being more deadly than the disease.
Right. And that was always just really interesting to me because, I will admit this, and I'm only admit it because I'm not perfect, but it was really wrong at the time. I think I totally ignored it. Even from the first time that I had heard about it, which was probably in the 80s sometime, I ignored it because I didn't think I was going to get it. And, you could have unprotected sex with relative safety. I mean, it was stupid, but, it was basically a little bit of Russian roulette and dumb. I mean, growing up and going to college, and I wasn't any different really than anyone else. I mean, everybody was doing it, Cass.
Well, yeah, dude, I was living in the music scene at the time. Believe me,
there you go.
Know.
There you go.
Yeah, wow. I just stopped 125 dirty groupie jokes.
Right.
Anyway, but no, I get the point. The thing, but this is interesting the way you said that because it kind of dovetails back into the China thing. You weren't stupid, and we weren't stupid back then. It was a learning process. It was a growing thing. We and during the free love era, the worst that was going to happen is you get pregnant and have to settle down. Oh no.
Right.
You see? So the spread of AIDS, and it's really, really analogous, especially the way you put it here. It's a learning process for the globalization for everyone. This is like the next stage of, you might call it the next stage of industrialization. It's a learning process. Okay. Now we know, okay, do this. You see? So at the time back then, free love wasn't stupid. Just like for now, eating raw bats, I guess, wouldn't be considered stupid over there, although now it's considered stupid. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
Learning process.
So currently there's between 31 and 35 million people living with HIV, and the vast majority of those are in sub-Saharan Africa. And that's, 5% of the population and roughly 21 million people. And, even 5%, I mean, it's not uncommon in different parts of Africa for men to be married and have multiple sex partners. I mean, and they know about it. Everybody knows about it. They're very well. I think they're more educated than we are now because it's one of those things where the World Health Organization is one of the things they do best is educate people about diseases, especially, right where they are. And, so it's not an unknown thing. And the global deaths from AIDS has dropped, but used to be 2.2 million a year, and now it's only 1.6. That's 1.6 million people a year. That's a lot.
It is. And the decline in the spread of AIDS is directly proportionate to the rise of education about it.
Right.
As in most things, right?
Right.
Go ahead.
Do you remember hearing, I don't remember this, and so I was born in 1965, and of course I wouldn't remember it, but I don't remember really hearing about it, or I've never really studied anything about it, and that's Hong Kong flu, which was a pandemic that I guess it's an offshoot of the H2N2 virus caused by the H3N2 virus, and took off in July in the summer of '68, and it took only 17 days before outbreaks of the virus were all over the world. I mean, well, in Eastern Asia, Southeastern Asia, Singapore, Vietnam, Philippines, India, and then over to Australia, then to Europe, and then the United States, and there was a low mortality rate of 0.5%, but it still, back then resulted in deaths of more than 1 million people, including, I guess, about 500,000 in Hong Kong, which was at the time 15% of the population. And it's one of the Southeast Asia. It's not every household didn't have a big jug of aspirin or whatever like we have now, acetaminophen, and
exactly.
A fever in 1968 in Southeast Asia was a big deal.
Well, to be fair, a fever in 1968 was a pretty big deal here too.
It was,
If you look back on like Leave It to Beaver and whatnot, if the episode where Beav got sick, it was a big deal.
Right.
I know that's not really a very good analogy to real life, but it kind of gives you an idea of the cultural zeitgeist around getting sick.
Yeah, it's amazing. And then again in 56 to 58, Asian flu. It was an influenza pandemic outbreak. Called it Influenza A, originating in China, killed 2 million people. Traveled all over China again, in Singapore, Hong Kong, up to the United States. Wow.
These things get around back.
And that was almost 70,000 people died in the United States that year, or that was in between like 1958.
Oh, was it that high?
Yeah.
I thought it was lower than that.
No, 69,800 in the U.S. alone. Well, that's a lot of people. That's a lot of people.
It really is. That's enough that everybody. That's enough that theoretically everybody knows someone who died.
Right. Absolutely, especially then. And then in 1918 there was a flu pandemic worldwide, and that's the biggie. 20 to 50 million, and there's I think it's 58 minutes long. It's a YouTube. Well, it's not a YouTube, but it's a documentary that you can watch on YouTube about the 1918 flu, and it's an amazing documentary.
Yeah. Now, is that the Spanish flu?
This one
was that
let me see. Of the 500 million people infected in 1918 that were in Asia, the mortality rate, well, at that time when it first took off, the first 500 million people, the mortality rate was 10% to 20%, with 25 million deaths in the first 25 weeks.
Which is terrifying if you actually think about the numbers. That is terrifying.
Right.
The Black Plague was like, you guys, everybody knows I'm bad with numbers, so forgive me. But Black Plague was what, like 14% mortality rate?
Black Plague had to have been just horrible. I mean, one thing about the pandemic in 1918 was that the good and bad thing was that literally people didn't hear about it. And all over the world. I mean, it was wiping out people, and of course, there weren't all these panics, so people were probably, it's 6 1, half a dozen the other. Back then, I don't even know what that would even look like, or how we were organized enough to even handle anything like that. Obviously, we weren't, but
I was going to say we weren't. Pretty much the way they stopped the Black Plague was, some monk stopped killing brown people long enough to hear him out. And that's, if it wasn't for that, who knows how bad it would have gotten.
Right.
But that kind of goes back to the point of what's happening now and why we're saying don't blame China. As far back as we can remember, these plagues have been used to marginalize, the other. Right. And for political gain, things like that, and we can't do this as a people anymore, folks. I'm not even talking about like, oh, let's be nice to each other. I'm talking like we're cutting our own throats as a society. for a buck, you know?
So back in 1910 to 1911, there was the sixth, not the fifth, the sixth cholera pandemic, which killed over 800,000 in the Middle East, North Africa, Eastern Europe, and Russia. Now, I'm not sure why or how that happened, but, or how it spread, but, it's cholera, which still exists in many parts of the world. You would think would be easily cured, but, there's still.
The funny thing is, it is.
What's that?
The funny thing is, with cholera especially, it is easily cured, and that's one of the reasons why we don't see it here.
Right.
The cholera epidemic was directly followed the basically spread of the lack of sanitation. If you check on it, and you check back on it, essentially, that's a really good reason. The cholera outbreak is a really gosh darn good reason why we should be washing our hands and using clean water. That's right there in a frame. Pow.
Well, I think, somebody who's really spearheading the effort, or the group that's really spearheading the effort, would be the Bill Gates Foundation. They're providing a lot of clean water worldwide, a lot of really cool videos. They're actually taking kind of ordinary people, YouTubers and things like that, who go to these different countries, and you get to see the amazing work that they're doing worldwide. But again, cholera is that's crazy. I mean, there's so many people that don't have clean water, and there's so many people that don't understand why they don't have clean water, and there's so many people that don't understand why they drink their water and get sick from time to time. So
yeah, exactly.
And
it just goes just goes to show a little bit of education goes a long way.
Right. And I'd be interested.
If you guys are interested,
go ahead, Cass.
Sorry. I was going to say, if you guys are interested in checking out what happens when the rich and powerful use their power for good, look into the Bill Gates organization. You say what you want about the man himself, but the organization is doing a lot of good.
They do in Africa. They do this thing with drones, with vaccines, and I didn't really realize just how this worked until I guess it was a week ago. And there's a YouTube video, and there's this gentleman from Wales, and he travels around, and for some reason the Bill Gates Foundation asked him to. He's a vlogger, so they asked him to go to Africa, and so they went to this facility, and it's amazing, ultra modern facility, out in the middle of the jungle with these huge drones. Nice. And they're big drones. And they have this catapult launch thing, and they throw these drones in there, and they'll fly them. They'll do an 80-mile round trip with these drones. And they'll do anywhere from 50 to 80 flights a day. And basically they take a cardboard box and it has some bubble wrap in it, has this really weird parachute thing. It just kind of slows it down a little bit. And they'll fly in the middle of nowhere and drop this package, and could be vaccines, could be other medical equipment or whatever. And that drone flies itself back, and catches itself on a cable on a tail hook, and they have 20 or 30 of those things ready to go at any time, and it's absolutely incredible.
See, that's amazing.
So, but it's necessary, which is the weird thing. You wouldn't even think that would, to me, that would be something that it's really cool and somebody thought of it, but it's absolutely necessary because there's people out there nobody will ever get to. Oh yeah. So, it's necessary. And and connecting to other world problems, like for example, world hunger. It's a big issue amongst the conspiracy group that we have enough food to feed everybody on the planet. So why aren't we? Right.
Well, one of the main answers to that doesn't involve bad guys in lizard masks is that food distribution is a big problem. Okay, so investing in technology like this is going to help alleviate that, And so, yeah, I know it's a side note, but that's any reason to hope. You know what I mean?
Well, ultimately, though, if you pandemics and people that have good nutrition are better able to sustain themselves and survive a pandemic, because
exactly,
or any sort of outbreak of any sort of disease, locally even. It's just one of those things that you absolutely cannot live without to recover, to survive something in the future. I mean, it's good nutrition is a must, and clean nutrition, and that's one of the reasons. We're talking about cholera,
yes.
why it's so fatal and so hard to deal with. Dehydration, unfortunately, you have cholera, you need more water, and so it's really a double-edged sword. It's a rough one, and so many countries suffer from that, and the sanitation's so poor, and the way it's set up. I mean, literally in London, one of the most civilized places in the world, or at least they thought they were, 300 years ago. They're pooping in their own drinking supply, and they drank water out of the Thames for 1,000 years prior, and cholera was a big deal. But for the life of me, I cannot. There's a lot of fresh water that pours into the Thames, but why they would have these outbreaks of cholera, and why it happened all the time for sure, but they had big outbreaks that occurred from time to time that were much worse than what they would experience normally. And it just seems to me, why they couldn't put two and two together, and it took so long. But
do you mind a little sidebar that sort of really drives home the point?
Do it.
You guys want to know something interesting? Is at the time, circa Victorian and Edwardian period of in the UK, it was publicly understood, and everybody just knew that a doctor was a gentleman, right? Obviously, he's dressed nice, he's had the education. Well, on top of that, everyone knew that gentlemen were clean. Okay, so doctors never bothered to wash their hands. They never bothered to brush their teeth. They never bothered to bathe, because even if they think no one would say anything because they're gentlemen. So
you're cutting out a little bit, Cass.
Oh, sorry. Okay, so what you would have happened, doctors who were just assumed to be clean would then deal from patient to patient and patient, spreading the stuff around. So, the idea that cleanliness is next to, is basically right there with health. You would be surprised how recent a discovery that is, And that kind of speaks to what we're talking about. The difference between science and public perception can mean the difference between life and death.
Right.
It really can. So you think that these, we look back and we have like our Downtown Abbey and our Doctor Who. So we look back and we think, oh, well, these men were clean and learned and disciplined. Not so at all. It turns out when you give someone the idea that they're just going to be okay, they tend to do a bunch of things that make them not okay.
Well, in France and the UK, they were in, let's say Britain was, there was the advent of colognes, eau de toilette. And it was so common for them to have, basically what's the word I'm looking for? It's a chamber pot right in the middle of a party, maybe behind a partition. And, women would just walk over top of it and stand over top of it and let it rip, and guys would do it too, and so basically they're literally having this high society party, and they had no problem whatsoever just taking a leak right out in front of everybody until it, they had staffing, of course, would they have to haul this out, and obviously that wasn't the most sanitary situation, and these big,
and then it usually got thrown,
right? And these big groups would get together, and it was not out of the ordinary for that to happen,
Right.
which to me seems rather uncivilized, but
Oh yes.
it was.
But it does. No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm done.
Oh, but it does bring up a point that we can use to really have a lot of hope for the future. You know, if we can look back and see that a commonplace practice that nobody even thunk of twice, wow, that nobody even thought about twice back then. If we can see and say, hey, well, that made a huge difference, right?
Right.
Just sanitary, private bathrooms, washing your hands. If we can see how big a difference that obvious a change can make, what can we do? What do you think we'll know tomorrow that is so obvious today that can save so many lives and improve quality of life so much? You know, I don't know, but some kid out there is a genius. Some kid out there is going to figure it out.
Well, apparently we're not clean enough. I mean, as much as we are showered and soaped and whatever, but yeah, it's, you know,
I disagree with that, but
these
I'm sorry.
These viruses that have found a way to get into our bodies and then mass eject through our nose and mouth, they're pretty incredible. And
yes.
Have successfully survived and mutated and become better and more efficient at that because of, you know, our wonderful world that we've also done that as well, I guess. But so, yeah, we need to clean our hands often. Like not that. So Cass, yesterday I'm at Walmart and I posted this earlier on Facebook, you know, going into the men's room at Walmart. There's two different ones locally here and, both are horrible, and the men's rooms are horrible, and they're not.
Welcome to Walmart.
They're not clean enough, and usually paper towels are spilling out of the trash bins. But I walked in there, and there's all these guys standing around, which I've never seen before. And I was in 2 Walmarts in 2 days, and they're in there, and I'm like, it just hit me. I was like, what's going on in here? And they're waiting to wash their hands, and I've never seen that. And people guys just came in to wash their hands. Excuse me. And, you know, some of the guys had used the facilities and I was using the facilities and I was waiting to wash my hands, but there was a line there to wash hands. And I've never seen that. I mean, I've seen this a lot, you know, it doesn't matter if you're at Walmart or a restaurant or wherever, people will go into the restroom and do their business and just walk right out. And, you know, I have horror stories of that people don't want to hear that, you know, we're in restaurants and places, you know.
Oh, yeah. Well, anybody who's ever worked food service will be able to say, holla.
Yeah. Yeah, it's incredible, you know, and I probably worked in some pretty decent places, you know, back in my college days, which were actually, you know, much more, they were probably cleaner than some of the places that basically get by with their C+ or B+ health department grade, you know, that you see from time to time in the paper. But yeah. So what about social distancing? How do you think that's going to work out?
Actually, I think that's actually a pretty important thing. One of the things that the coronavirus is sort of shoving in people's faces is that there is actually a reason why we have borders between tribes. Now, one of the things I'm worried about is that racism is going to rise up, but you know, that's humanity.
Yeah.
I think that part of this seems counterintuitive, especially to the love and light community and the love and light message.
Right.
But there really is a reason why humans live in separate organizations. You know, herd immunity is a big deal. You know, now on the upside, I think what this is going to do is really sort of move the science of inoculation to the next step. Because you know, now that we've had a more or less integrated world, nobody wants to go back. You know, and nobody wants to go back.
And I don't want anybody listening to this either and thinking, you know, we're talking about tribes and whatever and the Chinese, but I don't want anybody to throw out that word
Oh,
racism, just
okay.
because I want to clarify too that, I'm from a mixed race household. And to me right now, because there is this problem in China, it makes me want to go there more because it's one of the places, China and the Philippines, that I love more than any place on earth. And, it's
Right.
I can't go there right now, and I want to badly because I love China and I love the people.
That's why while I was talking about inoculation. Forgive me when I'm using the word tribes. Please understand, listeners, I'm Native American, all right? I think in terms of tribes
and other stuff.
Exactly. I'm not talking about like, everybody stay separate. I stumbled over my words on that one. I apologize. Understand, inoculate.
Tribal's an old word. Tribal's an old word. Tribal doesn't mean.
Well, I've been getting in trouble for using it lately, and I don't quite understand why. So I just wanted to make sure everyone knows I'm not talking in terms of everybody separate.
Right.
So remember that inoculation is the act of preparing for the possible germs and organisms you're going to come in contact with. That's why I was saying that in the science of inoculation, if anything, makes that so much more important because nobody wants to isolate. I want to go to China. I still got to go to Nepal. Okay, I got to go to Egypt still. I have to, I want my children to be able to meet everyone. Every person in the world deserves to understand on an intimate, like eye-to-eye level that every tribe, every people, every culture, every color, every accent, every recipe is all part of the great tapestry of life. And if we start picking one color and say, that one's bad, then it ruins the whole tapestry.
Right. Listening,
so
I don't know if you got a chance to listen to the president today, but who he had with him today and introduced and who they're working with right now would be, just to put it in perspective, locally and nationally would be Walmart and Target and CVS Pharmacy and Walgreen. And basically they made the commitment to stay open and to keep their people healthy and make their workplace the healthiest places that you'll get a visit that day. And so you'll be able to continue on with what you need to survive in your basic essentials. But other people that they were working with were companies that were producing these test kits and also people who were actually creating a vaccine. So essentially what was the scary thing that happened in this last week, literally right in the middle of a National Basketball Association game, it ended. And that's because somebody got news that they had tested positive for the virus. So why did that happen? Well, we kind of reached a point where we needed to just pull the plug. And because right now we just need to buy a little time. Everybody needs to stay healthy for a little bit. So we can start testing everybody and we can start, vaccinations are down the road, but testing people are right around the corner. So we just needed to buy a little time. And, I think you're in a place and I'm in a place right now who, there in Montana, we don't have any cases, but that doesn't mean that there isn't a few people running around that have no symptoms, So, testing is on its way. You're getting what?
I'm in Denver. I'm getting daily requests for help.
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah, but, it's pretty bad here.
Yeah. Testing's right around the corner. And of course, we haven't had access as much as other countries and we fell a little behind and that's unfortunate, but that's why we need to stick with the plan and to, prevent this. If you get sick in the future, soon, stay home, odds are that you don't have it, but, odds are you have some other bug that's going around because unfortunately this is the season too. What a bad time of our year for this to happen. It's sickly ironic.
Yeah, but this is Earth. Did you expect anything else?
what a time, it's like, this is one time, where we get together, and yeah, there's cruises and whatever, but I mean, you have the NCAA tournament. You're going to have you're going to have other tournaments. You got high school basketball, and people are really social this time of year.
And for the nerds in the audience, this is con season. E3 got canceled. Holy crap!
Where was that?
Con season, like a Comic-Con convention.
No. Where? But the one you said got canceled. Where was that?
Yeah, E3 got canceled. I don't remember where they're holding it this year, but E3 is a big video game convention. It's like the event for video games, and it got canceled.
Yeah, this was going to be my season for conventions. I was going to start for the first time ever. I snuck in a few times. I didn't, kind of checked it out, and have been a couple of them. And
you should bring me with you. I'll be your sidekick. I'll show you the con life.
Incognito in a UFO conference that probably wasn't the best one in the world. That's why I'm not mentioning it, because it was just it wasn't good. But I showed up.
Gotcha.
And
I hear you. Well, I imagine UFO conventions. I've never been to a UFO convention, but I imagine UFO conventions are similar to like nerd conventions, comic book conventions, anime conventions, things like that. In which case, them's my people. That's my house. I'll show you around.
I did 2 summers ago. I did go to a Comic-Con, and here in Montana, it was really good. I mean, I had so much admiration for people that prepared so hard, and put together whatever costume that they were going to wear. And I mean, wow.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Nice job.
And I used to feed my family drawing fan art at conventions. It's a good life. It's an interesting life. You meet a lot of really good people there, but it can be a little much if you're not ready.
Right.
Especially like D&D conventions.
Right.
Wow.
Especially later in the afternoon on a hot day after everybody's been drinking a little bit. That it turned really strange, but yeah, it was. Especially the SCA people who had the swords and the armor, and after they had a few beers, I mean, they would go out there and things. I mean, it's a combat that it's combat, but it got a little.
It's all fun and games.
It got a little more rough after a few beers.
Oh yeah,
and
dude, the SCA will do that, man.
And it was unbelievable.
Right. We have a phrase, it's all fun and games until somebody pulls out a bat left.
Right. And how people were getting injured were, they were getting injured literally by their own armor because they were wearing helmets and whatever, and they get whacked so hard that their own armor would, put a big hurt on them. And they were proud battle scars though. I mean, it was pretty fun.
Oh yeah.
I loved it.
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
So yeah, stay home if you're sick. If you're sick, cover your. It's a hard thing for me to, I cough kind of regularly, and it's not because I'm sick a lot, but it's one of those things that if I'm like out in the open and nobody's around me, I just do it. But
yeah, I hear you.
There's some shit that can fly out of there that could linger. Don't do it. Cover it up.
Indeed. Thank God we don't live in a country with Ebola. I mean, oh yeah. Oh my God.
Do you remember what was that, like a year ago or a year and a half ago when there was an Ebola breakout and somebody like showed up in Florida and tested positive?
I did. That was near. That was right at the very, very beginning when I first started my show. In fact, one of my very first episodes was everybody calm down. You're not going to get Ebola.
Right. I mean, that's a little harder to get. And I mean, obviously they were super serious about that. I mean, right. And because we knew a lot about that.
Well, in the Ebola's case, there was actually some reason. There was actually a little bit of good reason to freak out. There was some factors about Ebola's survivability that were unknown. So there was some people that were genuinely worried we were going to have a stand kind of situation here with Ebola. But it turned out that the Ebola's, life cycle intolerances were well within what we suspected, not what we were afraid of. So with Ebola, there was a little bit of reason to get more scared, but not too much, But the point is, Ebola is not going to kill us all. COVID-19 is not going to kill us all.
Right.
Bird flu is not going to kill us all.
Yeah, there was what happened to the bird flu?
Right. That was gonna mutate us so we grew beaks or something or whatever.
And people,
every couple of years there's a new.
Go ahead. I'm reading here. I'm reading about the bird flu. Keep talking, and I'll have some.
I was just ranting.
But bird flu
every couple of years. Yeah, well, this bird flu every couple of years they got something. Oh, you got to be afraid of this now. Be afraid of this now. Be afraid of this now. I tell you what I'm starting to wonder if the conspiracy theorists are right, and this isn't some kind of giant psyop.
Well,
it's almost like
this says it was fairly. What is this? Wow, there was a high mortality rate in humans, which I want some numbers here. I don't see it, but
I can't find numbers on that one either.
Not right now, but
either way, it didn't have the oomph to be a real true pants sweater pandemic.
Well, there was it killed birds too. It was killing the birds. It was killing people who a lot of people worked. But so I'm looking at this on Wikipedia, and there's like a list of subtypes that's like on my huge computer screen. It's like 20 inches long. So there's a lot of them.
Wow.
So I don't know the number, like H7N9, how they come up with that number, what the H is, what the 7 is, but that's interesting.
I wish I knew. I'm not
I don't know. I shouldn't even have brought it up, but I don't know what that is. But yeah.
No, it's good to bring it up because that might inspire somebody listening to go and find the information themselves. You see?
Right. But this is a real technical one, and obviously, if you look on Wikipedia and start reading about it, it's way too technical because the reason why is because they've done so much research, and I think it's because it was killing birds and was killing humans. Of course, obviously we don't want our chicken to die out, and that would be tragic. Even though, a few humans would die from time to time. Definitely don't want our chicken to die.
Well, there's also a deep-seated psychological factor there, which I think was a big factor in the panic around the bird flu. Is that we've all heard the phrase "canary in a coal mine." Ever since the days of Solomon or before, people have been relying on birds, to be the foreteller of the environment. If there's going to be an earthquake or a tsunami, you watch the birds. If there's going to be a plague, you watch the birds. So there's a very, very deep-seated, like lizard brain level of reliance on bird health in the human psyche. So when we started seeing birds drop, we freaked.
Right. I think one of the most disturbing things so far that I've run into, and the CDC website is vast, and disease scares me. And one of the things that I didn't expect to run into on the website was smallpox. And
really,
yeah, they got. I mean, it's just like they have a COVID-19. They have a smallpox page, and of course, many different links. And smallpox, according to the World Health, which was called the World Health Assembly, they declared it eradicated in 1980, which no cases of natural occurring smallpox have happened since. But one of the things that, of course, you hear about is weaponized smallpox. And it's a bad one, man. It's smallpox is really bad. And it's ugly. It's not like the common cold. I mean, you get these round, God, what do they even call them? They call them pustules or a rash, basically. Right. So they have this rash, which are these big round sores with a dent in them, and that's the worst. There's different. There's many kinds of smallpox, but and then they scab and then they fall off, and of course, I mean, it's just the horrendous story of our early biological warfare when we gave American Native Indians, blankets from people that had smallpox. And That's a bad page.
Yep.
That's a bad page in our history, man.
Oh yeah, I'm
Wow.
sure you guys could hear the tension in my voice the minute you mentioned it. I'm like, yup. Brr.
I mean, that is harsh.
messed up.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. Well, I think there's a reason why we all have a reflexive disgust reaction to biological warfare.
Right,
You know?
right. It's the worst. Yeah.
And I think I think ultimately that's why the coronavirus is really, really, sort of impacting everyone, because it's throwing in everyone's face how scary it could be for you to just walk around and then suddenly you're going to die of something that happened to you weeks ago.
Right.
You know?
It crosses all cultural and every boundary for that matter.
Yeah. It doesn't even care what planet you're from.
Not at all. And if you're sick, they're recommending, of course, wearing a face mask if you're sick, and especially if you have to be home and with somebody taking care of you. You're gonna have to be mindful, and you don't want to. I mean, the thing about a pandemic is you really want to be sensitive about making others ill, and that's why you stay home. And that's why you do what you do and stay clean, because you may not know that you have it, but when you do get it, or if you do get it, it doesn't end there.
Oh, and for goodness sake, if you're one of those people saying, "No, I can go to work, I can take it." Okay, dummy. Let's think this through for a second. If you really are so tough that you can just swing, and go to work and whatever, that means you're breeding and carrying a stronger version of the cell. You're going to get everybody even more sick. Do the man thing and stay home.
I think I can do it though. I'm going to glove up. I'm going to wear a mask now. I'm going to stay home. I really need the vacation.
Okay, I'll tell you what.
Go.
Yeah, there you go. If you're going to do the full body Darth Vader suit, then okay, we're good. But until then, hey, there's a silver lining. I finally have my excuse to buy a Darth Vader suit.
Right.
Uh-huh.
That would look good too. I mean, you're going to see a lot of variations on different suits of people wearing it, but also clean and disinfect everything. If you have a house or a building that people frequent, they're in and out of there. Do the best you can. I mean, obviously bleach works really, really well. 5 tablespoons or a third a cup of bleach per gallon of water. 4 teaspoons of bleach per quart of water, and spray it down. 70% alcohol should be able to kill it. Mm-hmm. Use a little more alcohol. There's nothing wrong with more alcohol.
Or if you're one of those people that's sensitive to alcohol, you can always use vinegar. You're going to want more vinegar, in the mix. Yeah. But if you're sensitive to alcohol, use vinegar. It's almost as good.
Right. Wow. So, how's it changed your lifestyle so far? Any differences? I mean, you have a child at home with some health issues, and obviously you don't want her to get sick.
Yeah, that's actually been. I was actually kind of wondering if that's one of the reasons why you wanted me to have this conversation with you, because it's the coronavirus has played a major role in my life. It's not just the people, the viewers and whatnot on my regular shows who are sending me requests for aid and help. But it's also my own daughter. I mean, she needs a heart transplant. She's on the waiting list, right now for a heart transplant. In addition to that, the her immunity is dropped in crazy down. So because of that, so she's in the hospital right now, just under observation. If she gets the coronavirus, she's probably not coming out. Yeah. But thank God. I hate to say this, but thank God she needed a heart transplant. Otherwise, they wouldn't be giving her the care.
Right.
So on the one hand, this is terrifying for me. But on the other hand, what kind of lottery did I win? So it's
because if she gets sick, she's going. I mean, she's one of the. It doesn't matter how bad it gets. I mean, she's going in. They're going to take care of her, and they're going to take good care of kids. I mean,
well, in her case, that's why I'm saying thank God. In her case, they just said, screw it. The coronavirus is in America, is in Denver. Take her to the hospital. They check her 4 times a day for it.
Right.
So,
wow.
So on the one hand, it's terrifying, but on the other hand, it's lucky. So you take the good, you take the bad, you take them both, and there you have it. Anyway.
God, I haven't heard that song.
But yeah,
I haven't heard that song in a long time. That'll be, that's going to be in my mind all night now. Oh, wow.
Welcome to my brainworm. You know me, I can't resist a song, Q, man.
So give everybody a little glimpse as we close here into your life and take a minute and talk about your show on Facebook and promo that and whatever else you want to talk about and who you are.
Okay. Well, first off, the first thing I'd like to promo is the Bradley Powers Esoteric Hours. For those of you who are fans, we're on a hiatus right now, but Bradley says that we're going to come back better than ever, and I trust him, so that's great. As far as the main show that I do, it's mostly just your morning coffee with the Lion's Pride. I do a variety of other shows, but with my daughter in the hospital, it's in a major state of transition. So we're pretty much just down to morning coffee with the Lion's Pride. Mostly we talk about hyperspace and aliens and things like that. We also talk about spirituality, and that's where I do most of my work. I'm a healer. I'm an energy healer. Scientists have been calling what we do quantum healing, but that's actually an inaccurate name. It's closer to macrophasic healing. The reason why I'm able to do this with such proficiency is because I'm not from this planet. I'm not sure how much Cameron wants me to go into that, so I'll just kind of, your UFO crowd calls my people feline Lyrans, but that's only one mythologue. So we talk about all that and stuff on the morning coffee with the Lion's Pride, and all of that really is to fund the Lion's Pride Network, which we feed the homeless, we get blankets for people, we do what we can. If you've got a problem, no matter how big or small, we'll try to help you with it. And it's not less money and more. Think of it like this: everyone knows someone, everyone knows resources. Okay, even if you can't help the world. Like if you're sitting at home going, well, what can I do? I've got no money. You know something that can help somebody. So that's what the Lion's Pride Network is all about. It's people helping people to help people. If you've got a problem, you come to the Lion's Pride Network, you say, hey, this is the problem, and someone can probably help you. That's what we do all together. Hand in hand, we shall all cross this river. Every tribe and every species together. And yes, I said that 3 times on purpose.
So one of the things that I want to say about you and the show you do like every day, even on Sunday, right?
Morning coffee.
There's no weekend. Just as long as there is a morning, you have a show. But there's about, I don't even want to think about them, but there's probably 5 to 10 people that podcast or have radio shows on that could sit for 2 hours and just talk alone. You're one of them. And probably 6 or 7 of the other ones you don't want to listen to. I don't want to listen to, but it's an incredible skill. And that's why I had you on, because I could talk about anything. And if I feel that, I felt that if I mentioned a couple of topics, you could just hit it and we wouldn't have to worry about any dead air. And
I hope I did well.
Yeah, you did. And it's always interesting. And I listen, so if I'm at work or wherever I am, I listen, I'll pop on Facebook and just kind of randomly from time to time. And if I see you there, I'll just click on it. And I think you see me from time to time. I'm listening in and seeing what's going on and what's up with the world and what's up with your life. But in closing, I just want you and I to reiterate that people need to relax.
Oh, yes.
The fear
it's
of the right. And the fear of the unknown is hard to overcome. And that's one of the things that in the time that we've been around on this planet, we haven't gotten over. We still worry about it. And there will always be the unknown. There will always be those question marks. And but there will always be good people around you. you're going to be okay, and I'm going to be okay, and Cass is going to be okay. And if you don't believe it, ask somebody. And if they don't give you the right answer, just ask somebody else, and you're bound to find somebody who's going to tell you that it's okay. And it is. So
find your intellectual tribe if you gotta. Yeah.
So I want to thank you, sir. Cassidea Lightwing. Thank you so much. Again, the best name on radio or in podcasts. And he stole it right out from under me. I didn't think of it. The best name in broadcasting. So,
well, your name is pretty good too, sir. Commands respect.
Cassidea Lightwing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Bauer.
My Alien Life Podcast.
You can find my website at www.myalienlifepodcast.com, and please subscribe to my latest downloads at iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, and at podbean.com. And please follow me and like me on Facebook and Twitter. My Alien Life is written and produced for broadcast at Studio 254 in the Northern Rocky Mountains. The music you are hearing is produced and created by Elion. You can find all Elion's work online at Heart Dance Records.